out.
Do you have the
live.
books and everything?
Yeah, but am I in the frame?
I think we're. Is it
You're live.
connected now? It's
You're-
live.
You're live.
We're here.
It's like people can
All
hear what
right.
we actually say.
Let's.
Yeah,
I got it.
you're live on Facebook.
All right, they see it. All right, we're gonna hang
This thing
up
works?
on our
Amazing!
support here.
What's up?
Everybody,
Man, we miss you guys. They got us quarantined out here in the middle of nowhere.
this is a good place to be
We got this
quarantined.
here coronavirus
on this ranch. I'm here at Marcus's place, and I was kind enough to let me swing by. Really appreciate it, Marcus.
Oh, bro, man, you don't understand, man. They got me out here by myself. Like me and the wife's family, and then so I've been looking for a team guy to get out here right quick, fast, in a hurry. I'm glad it was you, man.
Oh my, it's so. Texas is beautiful. Can we just agree on that?
Oh.
It is. That's so nice. It's nice to get out of our little
God bless him
apartment.
with his own two hands.
So we're here to do live book signings. This is kind of like a book tour, except guess what? There's no book tours anymore. And I don't know if I'll ever do a book tour. Maybe one day. Maybe
I got
one
rid of
day.
them after I started going through all that stuff.
Is this-
too, man? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was listening to a lot of people. They're in some tough spots right now.
Yeah.
And yours actually couldn't come out at a more perfect time. Because when people get, I'm gonna talk about it and brag about it for a second. Fortitude, yeah. Because a lot of people don't know what that is. They hear that word, and there's a lot of words that people throw around. They don't understand it until you get into a spot where you have to understand it. And man, yeah, the book tour, you ain't got to worry about that. Everybody's locked down, and they need something to do. So this will be a good one.
Just sign
Absolutely. And like I said, we're not doing a book tour, obviously, because we're doing social distancing. Me and Marcus have not touched each other once, and nor will we.
Not yet. But I've been out here for 17 days. You hear me?
Team guy humor.
I know. We're allowed to do that. Are we allowed to do that?
It's your Facebook. Actually, this streams to my Facebook.
Oh, this is
too.
mine?
This is your
Oh,
Facebook Live.
dude.
This does stream
Yeah, we're
to my
good.
Facebook too.
Yeah, we're good.
I believe.
Because you might not get
It's
reelected
supposed
if we're just on mine.
Don't go too off. Don't go too off.
No,
the
I
reservation.
got it, man. Are you sure you don't want me to wear the iPad? I'll probably be wearing it by the end
Well,
of
do
the
we have
night.
any extras? If we have
I'll
extras,
check, I'll check.
you should try and wear my. If we could get my glass
Oh,
eye
man.
into your,
Oh.
that would be weird. That'd be a whole new
No.
level of crazy.
Yeah, we're not.
Things are crazy right now.
We're not-
If that'll just no. Watch this, no.
All right, so
You know, back in the day before she was here, because that's the best part. I remember when our guys were coming in and you showed up with that Captain America one. I was like, bro, that is so awesome.
That's what I got in right now.
I want one. I was like, team guys, this is how team guys are. They're like, man, that's so cool. I want one.
Yeah.
Especially with the prosthetics.
yeah,
Bro,
it's.
let me
I
tell
mean,
you
you don't need two eyes.
No.
I mean,
No, that's why you got a buddy.
yeah,
He's got two on the right
yeah.
side.
You need a wingman.
Man, I heard
You don't need
I was
two
talking
eyes.
to some of these younger team guys, man. They said they got, he was like, man, we got these, we're talking about diving.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, well, we had these jet fins. He's like, yeah, we got the jet fins too. They got propellers on them and they boost you through the water to actually make you. I was like, nah. I was
Did
like,
you
wait a minute,
have that?
you actually got propellers on fins that,
I don't have.
Right.
I
We
didn't
didn't
get,
have that.
I didn't get to use those.
apparently that's a
Yeah,
thing now.
it's more of a thing now. Yeah, that kind of.
I'll go back in and they
cool
got
stuff
shit,
was.
right?
I mean, shouldn't they just let us use it?
I mean, that's what I mean. He's,
Right.
Because a new guy walk out with a pair of
Yeah.
those things, man. I'm gonna take them right quick.
I'm gonna
fast and
ask.
hurry.
I'm gonna
We're gonna
ask.
ask get some.
I'm
You
gonna
are a
ask.
congressman.
Yeah, I would think. I
mean, come on.
I want to test out the equipment that the taxpayer is paying
Yeah.
for.
If anybody should be getting that, it's you. You guys are rifling
Right.
up and going to the line.
I still haven't had a
there.
chance to visit any of the bases really. Like I haven't. Well,
Since you've done this?
Yeah. I haven't had a chance to like officially visit.
Oh, well, you got to
'cause-
do both unofficial, because then
Yeah.
you get hazed real good, and then the official where you come in as the dog and pony. Because you remember how everyone hated the dog and ponies?
Oh, they hate them. Yeah, understandably.
I mean,
Understandably.
Oh man. Yeah,
So
that's-
on this virtual book tour, I'm actually going to sign books for you guys. A lot of you guys have bought books already from Premier Live Sign. You can keep buying them on that on the link that's on this. And like throughout our conversation today, I am signing your books, and you will like
It's authentic.
yeah. And so you'll either get one of these or you'll get a book plate. Same thing. It really is my signature. My hand is hurting from all of that. But you know what? We live with fortitude, and
So
I
I-
keep going.
I literally had to change my signature doing
Really?
that. Yeah, 'cause
What was your old signature like?
Well, I had my full name in it.
Oh.
When you join the military, you never sign your
You
name
can't
as
do
much
that.
as you do as when you
Yeah,
sign.
that's true.
And then I was up in Philly for it was a benevolent order of police officers. 9 hours. Because they all stood there. If someone's willing to stand in line to get your signature.
Yeah.
And then I got a piece of advice from Governor Perry, Secretary Perry, excuse me. He's like, if somebody's willing to stand in line to get your signature, make sure they can read it and talk to him. That man, he taught me so much, man. He just kind of on a level like that, right?
Yeah.
But I started, someone stole my identity. That was great.
Was it your twin brother?
Man, he just does that normally.
You just
Dude, we didn't talk about that dude all day, right? So then I had that's when that speed one comes in.
Yeah.
Where like people are like, hey, you get rider's cramp? I'm like, hell no. After everything we've been through,
I've always had this one. It doesn't quite. I mean, I think you can tell it's mine. But yeah, I'm clearly not spelling it out.
If I didn't know
spell
you, I
out
would
Dan.
know that said Dan Crenshaw.
That's Dan. It says Dan. And then there's a C.
Yeah, I know.
Right? It's like, there's a scribbly C. Whatever.
Yeah, my
We'll
daughter
know it's
writes
mine.
like that too, man. I'm like, hey, babe, you can't, you got to get the inside of the lines. No, I'm kidding, man.
Too many letters.
You go through what you
It's-
went through, man. You
it's
can
too
scribble
many
all. Yeah,
letters.
that's what you tell him, man. I was like, I can't see on
Too
the
many
right eye,
letters.
man.
I can't-
I'm on that right side.
I can't see what I'm writing anyway.
It goes off the page.
Yeah.
Man, I'm glad you're here, bro. I'm not kidding, man. I've been riding around all day for the last couple of weeks. Just
This is the life, man.
It is
Texas
beautiful out here,
country. It's so beautiful out here. The sun's about to set. We're doing our thing, and so I want to. There's some questions I want to start answering about coronavirus. I get that some people are probably looking for a break from coronavirus, but also a lot of you maybe expect some updates. I want to hit some of the most common questions that we hear regarding this giant $2.2 trillion spending package that we passed last week. And there's a lot of concern about that. Some of the accusations were that it's like a corporate slush fund. This is not true. Some of the accusations were more from the libertarian side, was it's a giveaway to big business. So frankly, some of the same accusations. This isn't like a normal stimulus package. This isn't a corporate bailout in any sense, because no corporation, no industry did anything wrong. We forcefully paused the economy. We told people to stop consuming, stop doing things. And when that happens, well, the economy takes a quick downturn. The economy needs money rotating around it constantly. And so we had to inject capital into businesses, small and large, of all kinds. And the first tranche of money is being figured out now for small businesses because they need it the quickest and need it badly. And because the demand's going to be so high, they're going to make sure that they guarantee payroll, at least payroll gets forgiven. So yeah, you're taking out a loan as a small business, but that payroll portion of it gets forgiven. And then on top of that, more expenses for rent and utility also get forgiven. The details are still being worked out in the regulatory side, but the intent of the legislation was that it all gets forgiven.
I got a question.
Yeah.
So if we're $20-something in $20 trillion in debt, which most people can't quantify that number.
Yeah.
If you was like, I'm gonna pay you $1 trillion, like, let me see it.
Yeah.
Show it to me.
Right.
Most people don't even know that
Can't
that
even
stretches to
imagine
the
it.
moon and back around.
Can't even imagine it.
No. Matter of fact, all the way back to when Jesus was alive, you can lay him out footstep for footstep. For what I listen to people calculate that the whole time, and I'm thinking, if you come through with a $2 trillion stimulus package, where'd you get that money?
Yeah.
You got it from us, right? Which is lets you know how amazing our people are that they can float a check like that, and then we get charged for it to bring it back to us.
You got it
which I
from
don't
our-
understand that either. But if $1 trillion, you could literally give each person how much money in the country. If you didn't route it through the
Right.
Kennedy Center,
Somebody did it.
and,
It's probably,
which is crazy.
It's a few thousand.
That's crazy.
Somebody
it-
did it in that calculation. I'd have to do it quickly off the top of my head.
I'm just busting your chops, man.
No,
But sometimes the numbers aren't adding up. We talked about that a little bit.
So it's a problem. I mean, the reason I don't like an enormous debt, like right now our debt without the coronavirus was 23 trillion.
Yeah, but
so
we're in
it's
the
immediately 25 trillion.
Yeah.
Immediately. And the problem with having a $23 trillion debt is that when you need to spend $2 trillion, it's much harder. And it's much harder on our ability to sell bonds in the future and actually pay down that debt. It's much harder on our future. So how are we paying for it? Well, we're paying for it with our future. And there's
people
going
are
to
dying in their house with coronavirus, right?
And so at times like this, you've got to inject money into the economy.
Well, the economy's not. That's where most people get frustrated. It's like, we talk about the economy. You guys locked down our houses.
Yeah.
What we talking about? I mean, how is everybody losing their jobs if nobody's doing anything?
Well, because the business can't, obviously, because nobody's doing anything. That's exactly why. Because they're not giving businesses money. And when businesses don't take in any revenue, I mean, there's this, and I've heard this criticism sometimes. Well, why weren't they prepared for this? I mean, you can't prepare for this.
Well,
you can't prepare for it. So
look, man,
their operating costs, they go up, and you can't do anything about it.
And we talked about this too, man. The media and everybody for the last for a couple years, man, they've been throwing stuff in front of us that hadn't been true. They've been crying wolf.
Yeah.
And then the wolf slipped through the door. And then they started telling us that the wolf was here, man. Everybody's like, whatever, man. Because they don't listen to anybody. I mean, that's not how that works.
I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan overall of how the media has treated this entire thing. What I talk about in my book a lot. So every chapter in this book is a lesson in mental toughness, and I think you'll be surprised by the lessons that you see here. They're probably not what you would expect. They're maybe somewhat what you would expect from a Navy SEAL, but I like to think that they go a lot deeper than that, and they're a little bit more creative. And part of mental toughness is having the ability to just stop and process, count to 10, process what's coming in, what's coming at you, what kind of information is coming at you. And our media, and another part of that, another element of mental toughness is the ability to listen to I think, or listen to the best interpretation that somebody is trying to give. And we've lost that sense of grace to an enormous degree. I mean, our media is always trying to find the worst possible meaning from what somebody said, the worst possible interpretation. And there's so many examples of that almost daily, right? Especially with the confrontational relationship between the president and the media. And it's not helpful. It's not helpful. And I get that it's part of politics normally. But at a time like this, you can't do that. You have a duty not to do that.
Man, you remember if you grew up in a family where the parents argue in front of kids? That's what it feels like when the politicians argue in front of us. Because the White House, look at that, it's like mom and dad, Congress, Senate, those are aunts and uncles, and we're all the cousins out here.
It's frustrating.
And my grandmother used to call it being ugly to each other. Like, y'all don't ever have, they have nothing nice to say ever. And a lot of people will post something and they'll about it, or they'll go, I would never say this, but if I did, I would say it like that. We just said it. You know what I'm saying? And think about it like this. So the average Speaker Pelosi, and I have the utmost respect for the baby boomers, my parents and everything, but they hate each other. Mm-hmm. And they're 80, 70, 80 years old. What 80-year-old is going to listen to anybody our age? They're just not. They're set in their ways, right? And they hate each other. Their war messed them up. Vietnam messed them up. So you have the patriots and the guy and the hippie, and they're just kind of doing their deal. And we're just all sitting here waiting and watching. And they don't ever get along. They never apologize. No one ever says they're sorry. And they just keep exacerbating this whole thing. And we're all sitting here. We don't do that. Yeah. They taught us right. With respect. And then they put us they hated war so much they put their kids in a 20-year one. Fight an enemy that doesn't even have a face. Yeah. You lost an eye. And when it comes to these books and everybody and who's writing them, every book is written by somebody, an opinion. Yeah. That's why the first 40 years of your life, you just have an opinion, then your perspective sets in. But you walk through it, man. You got the scars of battle. Not only that, you took it from the SEAL teams and that Ivy League education that, you wasted all that money. I'm kidding, man. My brother's hard got you. But, and now into Congress, into the Lion's Den, man. Then you just walk right back up in there, and I don't care what anybody says. If people talking smack on the internet and that bothers you, Navy SEAL. Yes. That really bothers you? Because if it does tell me, I'll go handle it because it shouldn't. Because everyone's going to have to say, they need to say something. They're frustrated. Rightfully so. Our people are rightfully frustrated because all they see up there is people just arguing and not getting along and not doing. Can you imagine, if we walked up in there? Yeah. If they sent a handful of us to over to Pakistan to do something that they would normally send the whole country, and we even wrecked a helicopter. Our dev group guys, man, and just trickles down there. So for what you are and what you've done, there's only a handful of people on the planet that have that qual. And it's incumbent upon you to spread and to give that back because they gave it to us. And that's what you're doing here, and that's what you've been doing. And man, hats off to you.
You said the word perspective. That's one of the first chapters in the book. It's called Perspective from Darkness. By the way, you can click on the link that you're watching right now, and you can order one of these signed copies. I already signed that one. Yeah, I signed one more. They told me I'm supposed to sign while we're doing this. So
let me get you to sign this roll.
That's cool. It's a beautiful signature, I guess. Perspective from Darkness it's the first chapter because it's like the first step to an existence of fortitude. Really, you have to have perspective, and we say it all the time in Bud's training, which is thousands have gone before you, so you can do it too. What that sentence is when the instructors are screaming that at you, it's a sentence about perspective. Yep. It's about hey, stop feeling bad for yourself. Somebody else has had it worse, no matter what. And that's the chapter I go in excruciating detail through how I was injured and what that felt like. And my realization, and I think the right realization, which is, well, somebody's had it a lot worse. I didn't get shot off a mountain. That would have sucked, right? But like, I didn't get my legs blown off. Like, that would have been worse. And I'm not dead. Like, most importantly, you know, there's so many more who have sacrificed so much more, and it's not to say that whatever piece of suffering you're going through isn't important. I'm not saying that at all, and I don't want to diminish that. But you know, fundamentally, this book is about outrage culture, not real suffering. This isn't a book to read about true grief, although it will help with that. That's not the purpose of it. The purpose is outrage culture and how mad people get online. And yeah, you know, sometimes it's real frustration that's understandable, but a lot of times it's not. A lot of times it's really unmitigated outrage over things that shouldn't matter, over something that when somebody misspoke. You know, it's deliberate misinterpretation of people's intentions, and it's really infected our culture to a huge extent, and I'm worried about it more than ever now during coronavirus. I mean, the political sniping just hasn't stopped, and we can't have those hard conversations about, like, hey, how do we balance the economy with the pandemic? That's a hard conversation to have, and it's easy to accuse each other of letting people die or putting the stock market above lives, but that's not what's happening. You know, economics or people's livelihoods matter in a public health setting as well, and you know, right now we're all in it together. We're locking down for a set period, but you know, we're going to have those hard conversations. It's going to be different everywhere we go. It's going to be different. The state of Texas is going to be different than New York for obvious objective reasons.
Hey.
And you got to have those conversations in an honest way in both places, and so. You know, we just got to treat each other better.
Man, life is hard. We came down here to suffer. You come in on your back, butt naked, can't do nothing.
Yeah.
And you learn how to stand up so you can fall back down. And if you want, the only way you know anything about yourself is if you apply pressure to that. And the only way to do that is take a step outside, walk out into somebody else's reality and see what they're swinging. And I mean, as you go through that, it's real easy to say something. And you know, you're supposed to say it, man. Get it off your chest. If you hold that in, man, it'll eat you alive. And I understand a lot of that vent and that frustration because they're yelling at something that they don't. They're only seeing one side of it. Yeah. It's like all those sides of the story, man. And then it's so easy to find the horrible part of any story.
Yeah.
I mean, you could talk about a tennis match and turn it bad. Like, man, they were hitting balls at each other and they had this club and, you know, just whatever you want. You know what I'm talking about? You can turn it into anything.
Right,
or
right.
you can sit back and understand that, like,
lens,
if I came down here to bleed,
yeah.
I came down here to take pain, I came down here to die if necessary. That's what we signed up for. That was the sexiest part about that contract, right? Yeah. And as we walk through that, man, you kind of, the harder we pushed. And look, man, here's how I know this. So everybody in our generation is as hard as we are because of what the reputation and what they let us do. You can't just have a little group of guys like us that went and did that. Yeah. They'd have gotten rid of us. Matter of fact, if they knew what they created, they'd have gotten rid of it a long time ago. But they didn't. And we pushed through that. You especially. And when you come out on that other side, man, it's not that we're any different than anybody else that we left behind, man. It's just like, hey, look, we had to walk on this side for a little bit. And we're coming back in here and we're telling you, look, I understand that you're complaining about that, and I'm glad that you are because it lets me know that I was doing my job, man, and you're safe, all right? And as we go through this virus and you get locked down and they start ripping all that stuff away from you, well, then you get closer and closer to me because you'll suffer. Mm-hmm. And in order to become a citizen of this state, man, you got to. It can't be good all the time. Remember, the Lord said his kingdom will not be manifest by cowards. And the United States is not that. I mean, we fight. Matter of fact, we're in a war with everybody else because we're a melting pot of everybody. So we're in a war with drugs and anything like that because we love our people so much. And that's just, Americans just love to scrap. There'll always be a handful of us that you can go send to do that and whatever. But when we come back, man, it shouldn't be like that.
So chapter 9 is it's a chapter on suffering and like actually the value of suffering. It's called Do Something Hard. And the whole point of that chapter is, well, it's actually pretty self-explanatory, but there's a lot of deeper reasons why you should always be challenging yourself. And I don't say, I'm careful to distinguish between suffering imposed upon you and self-imposed suffering. Because it's one thing to be tortured, All right, that's not self-imposed.
It sucks.
That would suck. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, we put ourselves out there for it. You know,
It happens.
It happens.
You can grow from that.
Yeah, sure.
And the,
I know, man.
the
It
next
took a while,
chapter,
yeah.
the next chapter is called "The Stories We Tell Ourselves," and growing and telling yourself the right story about your suffering. But there is deep value to self-imposed suffering. I mean, like BUDS SEAL training is 6 months of self-imposed suffering, and there's an awakening that occurs, especially after Hell Week, because you pushed yourself past limits you really didn't understand you had. You've changed perspectives completely. You were always this person, but you didn't know it yet, right? And that's what's so cool. That's what Hell Week is designed to do. It's designed to illuminate who you really already were, and that's such an amazing thing. It's what gives SEALs the confidence to go do the craziest things imaginable. It's like a building of habits of hard things, and I point out in this chapter that has to be habitual, like and it can start small. Like I don't expect everybody to go through BUDS. And I'm not saying go swim with sharks either, like, because, you know,
Just make your bed.
That's a bad, you could start by making your bed.
Make your damn
You
bed,
do
man.
that
That's
on
the
the
first
Craven
part,
thing.
right? Show up on time, make
Right.
your bed.
It's harder for a lot of people than some realize, right?
I mean, you
And once
didn't start
become
out
that-
like this. You didn't have the eye patch before.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? And the reason they call it BUDS, it's basically underwater demolition SEAL training, or it's beat up, dive, and suffer. Ultimately, what it is, when we walk in there, they jerk everything away from us that you ever came from, that you ever were, and they pull it. The reason we watch movies, same movies over and over again, is to give us our identity back.
Yeah.
And we say those lines, and no matter how bad it gets, they can take us back down to hell, and we still be BUDS.
Yeah.
Because we made it through there with nothing. Even when we passed and we did good, they were like, they beat us.
Yeah.
And then they're like, hey, you want to quit? You're like, no, I never quit anything.
Right.
And it got to the point you say that so much that the problem is a lot of times, like now, like guys will put, like the guys coming out and they'll put them on the drugs after things, like, hey, you need to quit that. You're like, what? As soon as you said never to quit, I erased you.
Right.
I mean, I'll shift to something else.
And so that's
You know what I mean? But I'm not quitting anything.
So that's actually in chapter 3 or 4. The chapter's called No Plan B. And the
That's
entire
perfect. That's
it's exactly what you're talking about, because people will always ask, okay, well, like, when did you think, how was it to not quit, or how many times did you think about quitting? And I'm like, well, I didn't think about quitting because it wasn't an option. Like, it was just I complained,
All the time.
I didn't like it. I was very unhappy.
Yeah, that's how you know it was working. It was tough, man.
Yeah, but you know, and I dreaded the next minute. Like I wasn't the stoic tough man. You know, I mean, well,
You don't go through there like
yeah,
that.
right. I mean, you shivered,
that's the humbling
and you're
part.
Just like, ugh. And, you make stupid faces when the boat's bouncing on your head, and like, you know, you look terrible.
Right.
But I never thought about quitting. I just thought to myself, this is just something I have to do, and that's what I mean by no plan B. Like you just can't. You can't quit, and then there's a way to live too. So it's obviously, again, like, I'm not writing a book for people to pass BUDS. That's not I mean, read it if you want to go to BUDS for sure, but not everybody's going to BUDS. So it's about living your life that way too. You know, it's like you have a goal, you're set on it, and if you change goals, that doesn't make you a quitter necessarily. Like if you're trying to be an artist and you just suck at being an artist, well, maybe you should try something else. That doesn't make you a quitter. But you know deep down, I think, when you quit, and only you know.
Sure.
You know.
And there were things that got a hold of me at a young age that I wasn't ready for. It took them later. I mean, I had to come back around to the backside before I got proficient at it. I'd love to do it. Right? And I mean, it's kind of one of them deals where your matter of perspective, like what you think pain is not true pain. And when we're signing up for BUDS, like you go in there and it gets hard, and then you quit. Like, well, yeah, you signed up because it was supposed to be hard. Your definition of what that was different.
Yeah.
And as we go, and we just don't shotgun into this. It's a day by day process. I mean, it's like a molding pattern that they slowly mold us into. I mean, yeah, it's a fire hose, and you know how you temper steel. You get it really hot, really cold. You beat the mess out of it, and it's easier to go through that with a buddy, with a bunch of them. And then as guys quit, you're like, man,
I also like swimming in the Pacific with a lot of different guys because I'm terrified of sharks.
Bro.
And if I'm swimming outside of just off the coast of Coronado, or even go up north a little
yeah,
way,
right, the triangle there.
then it's
great.
bad.
That's
But
good
like
stuff.
for some reason, you get 50 other guys in there, and I'm totally at ease.
Yeah, because one of them will get hit, right?
Yeah, I mean,
like
your chances are much
man,
better. You
Nobody
know?
likes that guy. He'll be the one that gets
Yeah.
bitten.
Yeah, he's thrashing.
He's
a lot.
thrashing a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah, he can
yeah.
swim proficiently. Like they know that's not supposed to be in the water. Yeah, and the one thing they
Like
left
San
out
Clemente.
of all the brochures, and this was never in Texas history, that the Pacific Ocean never gets warm. I didn't know that. And it makes sense why everybody in California is so damn tanned, because they never get in the water. They just hang out on the beach.
They're always wearing sweaters.
I didn't. Dude.
You know, you're like, you think it's all like
think
sunny
that's-
and warm there all the time.
You think
It's
you're all
legitimately warm in San Diego, like September and August.
Yeah.
Maybe July too. But like, yeah, the rest of the year, I mean, it's in the 60s a lot. That's pretty normal. The water's always in the 50s or 60s.
58 to 64. It's
Yeah.
like they have a phone that goes straight to Mother Nature, and when a heli kicks up, you know, the OIC walks in, he's like, Mother, I need you to drop the cold down.
That's why.
These dudes suffer.
That's why I never got into surfing. Did you ever get into surfing?
Of course not. I lived in Hawaii. Like, hey, let's go surfing. I was like, sweet, yeah. And then on our day off, we can go to the office and do paperwork and fax some stuff, man. Who wants to go to the ocean during our days off, man? How's STV, bro?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they stuck me underwater for hours at a day. And I was just kind of like, man, whatever. But the only way you can go through that is with your boys.
Yeah.
And
That's it, greater.
Yeah.
There's a lot of psychological research, which I talk about in that chapter, that suffering together as a team like builds camaraderie like nothing else.
Oh.
It's why all these corporations and businesses, like, they'll bring people out to Coronado to do this stuff, and they get these like much lighter boats, and they put them through this like cute little version of Buds. But it's fun. It doesn't. You don't have to destroy yourself. You know, the whole point is like do something that's more challenging than what you did yesterday. That's probably the best way to describe the habitual need to do self-imposed suffering. It's like take a cold shower every once in a while, just to be like,
I still do
I
that.
took a 10-minute. Why do you do that?
Well, the water didn't warm up.
Self-imposed.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, just to see if I can still take it. My wife's, the worst, the one way she checks me is I'll be standing there and like one of the younger guys will walk up and she'll ask them to do something like a physical thing. And I was like,
No. I mean, it doesn't have to be physical. Like I like it to be physical. I want to climb a mountain or something, or just go on a hard hike. I mean, you just feel so good after that, or just do a workout that's like just a challenging, hard workout. But not everybody can do that for, I don't know, medical reasons or whatever. So I mean, it's anything. It's like get that household project done. Like read a. Say you're going to read that book by the end of the week.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like, I don't want to read that book. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Of course you don't. Nobody did, right? And when we said make the bed, literally, get up in the morning.
Yeah.
Because people put that, this is what I do to pattern my life. And I was like, but they don't leave this like, hey man, I wake up in the morning, open your eyes, make sure you're still on earth, roll your feet out, hit the floor, make sure it's stable, stand up, and stop right there. And then, showing up on time, people always how you get respect. I'm like, show up on time. Just be the one that shows up. Just show up. And then, man, just keep showing up. And none of that's going to stack on you in a day. And that's not how it worked for us.
And feel bad when you don't show up on time. Like this chapter.
And that comes with it as well.
Chapter 7 is called A Sense of Shame. And what I point out is like, we've stopped feeling the right kind of shame for things because we sort of stopped realizing what's good and what's bad in our culture. As it pertains to like outrage culture, what I've noticed is that the people on social media who are just the loudest and the most passionate, but like not in a good way, like excessively emotional, like they're the ones who get a lot of respect, right? That gets clicks, and it's like we engage in shameless behavior, but they're rewarded for it. And there's something off.
No, that's the best part about our family. I love America. We got every type here, man. And with this, there'll always be somebody in the family who complains. That's the best part about the holidays. Uncle so-and-so's coming, that's all he does is complain. But you love seeing them, man. If they weren't out there, I mean, the only way we know we're having some bad times is to have some good ones to weigh them off of, and vice versa. Yeah. So when they show up, that's a lot. It's just like anybody else talking to us. I got a football game. Imagine being at the Super Bowl and getting upset what the cheerleaders are doing on the other team. I don't know why you do that anyways, but it's kind of like, that's a relative thing. I mean, don't get bent out of shape about what somebody's saying outside of town. Bullies are bullies, right? Just know that if everything around you is all right, especially with us.
Yeah.
I heard you say something earlier, man. He's like, somebody talking smack. I'm like, and you care? Navy SEAL? I mean, what are you talking about? They do that. That's why some kid in the basement playing SOCOM and running off a real live frogman. I'm like, okay, come on.
It usually is. Oh my god! If you saw the memes,
nobody can talk smack like teenagers, man. They're great, dude. They teach me. I'm
they
like,
put so much effort into it. They put so much effort into the memes.
Like thought about it. I'm like, this guy thought about it.
Well, it doesn't bother me. Sometimes it disappoints me because I'm like, what? like is this?
I mean, there's gratification in that. They throw that out there. If it gets a rise out of a team guy who's supposed to have the thickest, and a congressman who lost an eye, you should be the thickest of all. If anybody can get a rise out of you, that's like a qual.
They didn't give me. Speaking of like mean questions, I don't think they sent me all of the mean questions. But I'm going to read some because I promised everybody that we'd start reading some questions. So we'll start with some of these COVID-19 questions. Do you feel that social distancing will become a normal part of life after the coronavirus, and just to a lesser extent? I think absolutely. I think handshaking is probably not a thing for like a long time. I have a good feeling about that, unless there's a vaccine that comes out. It's likely that some level of social distancing will be the norm. I think people are going to keep washing their hands. I think our society will become a lot cleaner, just generally speaking, for at least the next few years. As far as policy goes, we've already decided that we're doing 30 more days to slow the spread. So what does that mean? I mean, from the federal guidelines, that means no gatherings of 10 people or more. Washing your hands, doing what you can to maintain that 6-foot separation, closing places of business that generally crowd people together, like restaurants and bars, no big events. Those are pretty loose guidelines. Under those guidelines, the federal ones, you can imagine an economy continuing to function, just moving to takeout quite a bit, at least for a short period of time. If you're in New York City, obviously the lockdown is much more severe, and probably should be. I find it. I would like to see our leaders move towards a more balanced approach, right? Because we know a few things about how to mitigate risk here. Right now, we're like in risk containment, and that's not sustainable. You can't be in risk containment forever, because then we face different challenges regarding the economy, and that has public health concerns too. When people lose jobs, their health is a concern. Suicide rates go up. These are real issues. People lose their entire savings and their livelihood. So we got to move to risk mitigation. It's like if we don't want any of our guys to get hurt, we just don't leave the wire.
Yeah, but we're already in a fight.
But you have to.
Yeah.
I mean, then you got to mitigate that risk as you go forward.
Who goes out, who doesn't, man? And let me tell you something. Dying's part of this. And there's some of us out there that just have to go get in it to make this thing work. And if you're going to catch that thing and die from it, well, man, that's your spot.
I'm not saying that.
I'm saying it. Congressman, you don't say it, but I'm just telling you, man. Look, the reason bars and restaurants existed is because back in the day they probably separated us, and we were just looking for that emotional connection, and that was lost through a lot of the technology because tech kind of blew past us. And
I wonder if after this is all over that we will find renewed personal connection.
Bro, what's the virus doing?
So.
It's making you stay at home with your family and understand them. Everyone's worried about everybody else's problems, but in reality, man, it's like, hey, sit your ass at home, learn about your family because you don't know about them because you can't teach your kids how to do something. That's the thing that we can do, man. And then as that goes on, it's literally, okay, what's social distancing? Hey, man, give somebody some space. Yeah. People don't like you up and next to them and looking at their phones, reading all that, man. Give them some space, man. And that's great, too. And that's what it's teaching us each block. Because eventually what will happen is, I was talking to one of my handlers in New York, Jen. And I was like, hey, what floor do you live on? I was telling her to describe her apartment to me. She said, I'm on 14th floor. I was like, how many rooms? How many other families am I? Like, and she was like, I was like, what, you don't know your neighbors? She's like, no. I was like, well, how many on the floor? It's like 12 different families.
Apartment buildings really, it's like...
I was like, you don't know who you live with?
You really don't.
I was like, no reason you got a virus, man. If y'all all hang out, it can't get you.
Yeah.
Because what's going to happen after 2-week quarantine, man, learn some Morse code and tap on them walls, or, man, start throwing a barbecue, right? And then, because eventually we're going to have to come back together. You can't separate us from here. We don't do it like that. Yeah. Because everyone, that's not how that works.
No, it can't. It's just not sustainable. And, when we know certain facts, we know which populations are the most vulnerable. I saw some numbers out of New York today that show, I mean, the deaths from coronavirus that are very small if there's no other underlying conditions. I mean, very small. And so eventually we learn more about this. We learn how it spreads. and then we can risk mitigate as necessary. And I think it's just important for us to be bold enough to have those conversations and give each other the space to have that conversation. That's what I'm most worried about, is that there's so much finger pointing that when somebody's like, hey, we have to start getting society back to normal, well, they're accused of killing people. And that's a disingenuous, really bad faith accusation.
And you know what that is, right? That's because everybody's like right now. They touch that phone, it shows up at the door, and they want this right now. And that's not how it works. Look, we're in a fight. Like I told you, this thing slipped in through the back door and started whipping some folks. And if you watch and listen to all the doctors talk, man, they're like, okay, don't wear a mask. Okay, we don't wear a mask. Okay, so don't use it. I'm like, man, you guys are...
Yeah, I was confused.
You're trying to catch up.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, you got hit, man. You're swinging on the way down. And I was like, man, it's okay to step back and like, okay, some of us are going to get hit. And granted, this isn't... Doctor can't tell you this. They can't say this, but I'm medical too. I've had plenty of medical training. Now that I've had my ass torn apart all over the globe. So I know how this thing responds, and I know how people respond in crisis. They want to fix me. If they even heard that a drug would fix them, they'll take it.
Yeah.
And that could have been from somebody, man, they throw that down their throat. And this virus is affecting each person differently. That's huge. I mean, that's huge. And when you kind of step back and look at the numbers, because they're not adding up either. Man, everybody just calm down and let them do their thing instead of throwing all them words out. Because when people, like when we start yelling at you guys, y'all react in a way, you just kind of, it doesn't, no matter how steadfast you are. And you've been through hell. I couldn't imagine some of them congressmen there, the only job they'd had their whole life was being a congressman. When someone yells at them, they're like, oh, they don't even know what to do.
Right.
They just want to make everybody happy. You can't do that. Man, you got to be the parent.
It results in a lot of panic, I've noticed.
Yeah, I mean, you make everybody panic.
In the aftermath of COVID-19, with near-peer adversaries becoming an increasingly looming threat, how do we continue to keep today's military ready for future conflicts? Well, first things first, we got to keep our military safe, and they got to abide by the same rules that everybody else is. We do have some problems on some Navy ships right now where the virus is spreading. We got to make sure they stay healthy.
Right?
Yeah, carrier. China has been increasing activity in places like the South China Sea. We're closely monitoring that. We cannot keep our eye off the ball. I mean, China's a bad actor in all this. They really are. It's not talked about enough. The media would rather lay blame at Trump's feet, and frankly, I'm losing patience for it. Let's do some other ones.
I'll answer that too. So, as non-politician, don't let us find out that you poisoned our people.
Yeah.
You don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
You understand me?
100%.
And if you think because you got all of us sick that you're going to creep in and do something, you just had to deal with our politicians and a little bit of our military. You got no idea what goes on the inner guts of this thing, from the streets to the country. You walk up in here while we're sick trying to do something like that, that'd be a big mistake. I mean, don't let us find out you're making us sick, because I noticed that every election cycle a virus comes out of there and makes everybody sick. That's like a fact.
Well, they should also probably shut down those dang wet markets.
Yeah, I mean,
it's just
we'll eventually have enough to worry. But like, hey man, because Amazing Grace, that's America's grace. And we let stuff fly. You can hit us, knock us around, you can knock us down to a knee, man. But then you start hurting our women, our kids, and whatnot, making us sick. Then you're gonna. No one's seen it. No one has ever unleashed the full power of this country, which means just take the dogs off the chain and just turn your back and let us go do our thing. And trust me, they can't even imagine what that. I mean, people look at me and you like, hey, these are the team guys we're dealing with. No. We got dudes that literally are terrifying. that are terrifying. You understand that we keep locked behind glass like break in case of apocalypse. Terrifying. Me and him aren't them. We're just kind of like the other guys, right?
right.
Oh my God, the guys we got.
What advice do you have for my 24-year-old son beginning his Army career? I would say, I'll reference what I talk about in the book a little bit for this piece of advice. And one of the chapters is called A Sense of Duty. And a sense of duty can mean a lot of things. We define it pretty well in the military. We'll tell people exactly how they should embody that sense of duty, and that's very useful. One of the reasons I wrote that chapter in this book is because we don't identify that as well for just normal citizens. We have a free country, and we have this amazing foundation and constitutional framework that protects the rights of citizens to live with liberty. but we don't always remind people that the exchange there is that you live with duty. You live as a dutiful, responsible citizen.
Yeah, you're a citizen. That's what that is.
And
Boom, right there.
it's that citizenship. And he just has to remember that when he goes in the Army. And they're going to tell him how he should be. You know, they're really good at telling you how you should be. And,
well, otherwise
and
you wouldn't
should
know
be that. Yeah. And
I mean, we all have to act the same way.
Follow the rules.
Follow that rule, man.
And be the best at everything you do. Be the best at everything you do, and you can't go wrong. And be really humble when you screw up, because he'll probably screw up.
All the
He'll probably
time.
screw up.
I mean, all the time. If
Yeah.
you're not screwing up, you're not trying hard enough.
Yeah, and just that sense of humility and duty will get you a long way. How can we bridge the gap between people who have opposing views? Dale Carnegie shows us that if we can find similarities, we can have a better understanding of each other. But how can that exist when guards are up? It's a great question. It's really hard to answer because I'll just be honest. I've become quite jaded in the last year and a half. I like to have honest debates. I do the videos that I do because I want to address their claims directly. I don't want to build straw man arguments and then tear down those straw man arguments, right? I want to address directly the arguments being made. I don't feel that happens enough. I feel like we talk past each other in terrible ways.
Y'all do it up there, man, especially. That, and I'm not jaded. I live among, I mean, I still get to get out, and I love our country and our people so much, man. And when I get around somebody and they start talking, first I was kind of listening, and I asked them, like, please explain to me why it is you, don't tell me, explain to me. Mm-hmm. And then I'll explain, okay, well, I'm from this part, and this is why we do that, and this is why, and explain why. And then just make it fun. Like, with Americans, man, once you've, like, if we're stirred up, like, if the nest has been swatted, so everyone is always assuming that you're coming in ready for one of these, and in reality, man, it's like, hey, man, respect. Yeah. With all respect, just kind of calm down a little bit, because you and I can take it to a different level. And there's a different level after talking. Yeah. You know,
and the part about finding similarities is important. And so I like to point out, politically speaking, I'm glad we have, I'm obviously conservative, and I'm glad we have liberals. Liberals tend to point out things that conservatives wouldn't be so quick to notice, whether it's some kind of injustice or whatever, or what have you, or a problem. And oftentimes our goals are the same. Okay, we want everybody to have access to quality health care. Our goals are the same there. We have a very different idea of how to go about it. And I think my way is the right way, of course. We don't want people to be in poverty. We have a similar goal there. And so I try to remind the left that we do have the same goal, but I think that their solutions make the problem worse than they realize, or they have consequences that they're not taking into account. What I notice when they interpret my solutions, they usually think that we have some alternate motive. When you believe that somebody has an alternate motive, that's when things fall apart, right? And that's where that lack of
because we
understanding
made a
comes.
competition up there, and similarity is community. That's common unity. Yeah, that's how you get together. And
so how can vets get more involved in government? Well, a whole variety of ways. You can volunteer. For campaigns, you learn a lot when you volunteer. You learn a lot about what the issues are. You learn a lot about how citizens interact with you if you're going to knock on doors.
Let me ask you a question to expand on that. Yeah. So I get that question. What get involved in government? Tell the vets that, because you got in. We don't know. Mm-hmm. Once you got in, you handle it remarkably.
Oh, thank you.
But I mean, is it like when you were in deployment? Is it like a workup? Is it like going through buds again every day? I mean, up there you're in a fight all the time. But I mean, so is it cool to go to work? I mean, is it cool? I mean, is it like, because that's the thing. I'm like, it sucks, but I
wonder if you're also asking, like, how do you learn how to be in politics?
Same way as the military, right? It's like a day by day. Somebody helping you, or are they just all trying to trash you and throw you?
Kinda. I mean, me and Tara literally decided to run for office, like, from one day where it was, like, not even an option, from, like, a couple days later to where we were fully into it. So there was no time to build any capacity or build any knowledge. I mean, I was kind of a policy nerd anyway. I loved policy. I just graduated from Harvard doing my master's in policy. So it's not as if the policy side was foreign to me. I could talk through most policies, and I can do it even better now. But even starting out, I was at least armed with those tools, which I think is probably the most important thing. But just as important, actually, maybe even possibly even more important, is understanding how to communicate those policies to people. And so, to an extent, you either have that or you don't. Some people are just naturally good at it. This is a hard thing to teach. I'm not even sure what advice I would give to teach it. I'm not even sure that I'm so great at it.
This was like road tests. Once you go in there every day.
Yeah. Well, you're also learning every single day because, like, okay, let me try and convince this group of people that they should vote for me, and you're gonna know how they react. After that interaction, and you're gonna like, well, I screwed that up, or that went pretty well. And if it obviously didn't go well, if you notice people's expressions, like, what did you just say? Then you're obviously not doing it right. And so you learn, right? And you learn and you think about how to communicate a little bit better, how to tell your own story a little bit better. And
so this is the best way Morgan explained it to me. He's like, imagine coming up there, joining the SEAL teams as a new guy, coming into the office where the master chief and the skipper sitting and going, hey, I'm gonna change things around here. But people put me in here in the office, and I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna just change everything. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
It's just like, hey,
but everybody
check
thinks
the watch.
that, yeah.
Everybody thinks that. I mean, when they're running for camera, like, I'm gonna go in there, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this. I'm like, yeah, get your ass in line.
It's
back
so
in the
ridiculous,
back, right?
And I tried to never make that promise because I knew enough about
Just
government.
work hard. I'm gonna go and work
I knew
hard,
enough
right?
about government to be like, no, I'm not going to make these outlandish promises. This is a key reason why Americans, I think, are so mad at politics, is because they're so accustomed to hearing crazy promises, and then the politicians don't deliver because they can't deliver. Because that's not how maybe they can't deliver because the policy they were talking about was so absurd in the first place. It sounded good, but it was absurd, and it doesn't work for a whole number of reasons. Maybe that's why it didn't get delivered. Also, our system might not work that way. A lot of politicians will promise to deliver something that the office they're running for cannot deliver. The people don't know any better, so they still vote for it.
Right.
And it's like, and it makes people mad when they're like, well, you didn't say what you would say, you do what you said you would do.
The thing about like with the Democrats and Republicans. So the Democrats, man, imagine that's like in Drive, and they like to just shotgun. I mean, step on the gas and go as far forward as they can. They're there for a reason. They show us, man, how to progress into the future, and they show us everything that's beautiful about it. I mean, they're artistic, and I mean, they're wonderful. Our stars are wonderful. And then you have the conservatives that let you, hey, slow down and let's have a good time with what you guys just brought us into.
Yeah.
Let's understand this. Let's love it for a little bit. And they're just always like, no, let's just keep going. And we're like,
change for the sake of change.
Yeah, man, let's enjoy this where you got us for a second, and then because everyone's different.
Well, it's like and actually the last chapter of this book is this book, which, by the way, this is what we're talking about today. We're talking about all sorts of things. But the last chapter of this book is the only chapter where I think I get the most political. Throughout the book, it's fairly light on politics. I would love for people on the other side of the aisle to read this. I think it's very readable because I criticize conservatives plenty in this book, too. I try to use examples from both of outrage culture because this is not a conservative political book. But the last chapter does get into conservative politics a little bit more. And I get into this problem that I see on the left, which is they're always promising to end your suffering and change everything and revolutionize everything to bring you to a utopia. And I find that to be a really dishonest promise. And I think it makes our outrage culture worse for the reasons I explained earlier.
Yeah, we all want that. One person can't bring us. We all have to bring ourselves together. And when I hear people saying like healthcare is a human right. If it was a human right, you'd be born with it. If a human has to give you something,
that's exactly right.
Then that's all bets are off.
I can't make you treat.
No, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to make somebody learn it
Right.
to give it to you. It's your right to learn it here and practice it.
And this is the problem with the rhetoric because like you hear that,
No one can give you
that
anything free.
specific line about healthcare is a right. I'm like, listen, I just as badly as you do, I want everybody to have access to quality healthcare, but I cannot conscript a doctor to make them do things for you.
Can't do that.
That's
because then they get bitter, and that's how. Hey, age is rank here.
Right.
I mean, when you get to a certain age in this country, man, if you put work in here, everything. I don't care what's wrong with you. Matter of fact, our silvers and pearls and grays, they're the ones that be driving Ferraris and burning stuff down. They've lived through the life, right? And they put time into this country, man, enjoy it on the way out. And then the young kids, man, we'll be, strong backs. We're going to build it back up.
All right. We don't have that much time left scheduled, so we're going to run through these questions real fast. All right. I've been a teacher going on 25 years. I see nothing in our youth that gives them the resilience that we grew up with in the pre-1960 era. How do we get back to that pride and resilience that we grew up with back then? Read them the book.
Wait. In the 60s, what are you talking about pride and resilience?
Well, that's true. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, as a millennial, I want to defend my generation. Like, the 60s had some problems, too, with people burning flags and things also.
They humiliated their troops out. And I mean, like, with our generation, Gen X, man, they covet their warriors. I mean, like, I trained to be, and you and I trained to be the toughest dudes on the planet, man, and they treat us like wounded pups.
But what she is saying is probably correct. I reference the coddling of the American mind a lot in my book, and there's a lot of data to show that kids these days have been raised differently. If you talk to somebody in the Boomer generation or Gen X, like, they were let out of their house at like first grade. If you poll people our age, well, I'm a lot younger than you, but
how old are you now?
36. How old are you?
Older.
You know,
I'm 44.
Yeah,
I'm 44.
Yeah. So, you're a Gen X, or
I'm a Gen X. Damn right. What are you?
But like, and I felt like
What are you? What?
I was I'm millennial.
Are you really?
I'm an elder millennial. What? Get back here. Get back here.
I thought you were an X-Man, dude.
So
You're an X-Man
so
now.
there's some truth to that. But okay, we said we would do this fast. Do you miss active duty and fellow warriors? Of course. That's why we hang out with each other and scream at each other. How hard was it to dial back from the SEAL team going to school at Harvard?
That's a good question.
That was it's
like?
definitely true. I mean, I was mentally prepared for it. I knew how I had to change. I knew that the same jokes wouldn't fly. But it is hard, and it was still odd, right? It was still odd. I could expand on that forever. However, that I do answer that question to actually quite a
My
huge
brother had a
extent
blast
in this book.
I've run across guys in teams, man, that didn't even get out of high school, and then they graduated and went to Cal and become or Harvard and become doctors. It's in the military. What you learn is your routine and how to study. They teach you all that.
Yeah. Is it possible to actually achieve bipartisanship with the current members of Congress? She says, I love you too. That's so nice. Yes, even now, as mad as they make me, listen, it's actually not that hard to, if it's a decent bill that isn't very contentious, it's easy to get Democrats to co-sponsor it. If this was a normal time and we're flying back and forth,
right.
It's true. It's just not with the big bills. I mean, geez, we basically unanimously passed this last bill.
It's because everybody was sick.
We're yelling at each other, but we are still getting it done. So it does, and in normal times it still happens quite a bit. Every Monday is like bipartisan day. It's true.
Is that what Monday means?
Yeah. It's just because it's fly-in votes. So we fly in. We're not debating. It's just, hey, we already agree on this stuff, so let's just pass it.
So something important needs to come in on Monday.
Well, unfortunately, it's not the big stuff. It's like It doesn't mean it's not important. It really changes all the time, but it might be small changes.
Hey, this is great to know. I didn't know all this.
Yeah, it's like small changes to this, small changes to that. Okay, that's a decent idea. Let's do that. It's usually not overly significant.
So how do you get away with going into Congress worth nothing and coming out worth like hundreds of millions of dollars?
I have not figured this out.
Hey, when you do, man, let me know. I'll run too.
Because that's
the craziest thing I've heard of.
I forgot to say, like, the proceeds of this book that you buy today are actually a portion of going to charity for coronavirus, kind of people affected by the economic downturn of that. So
you put the work in,
because
right?
like this, because we have so many. I don't know how people make money in Congress. I think a lot of the folks that you know about, they already came from extremely wealthy.
Yeah, no, that's not true. I looked that up, man. Some of them up there, I'm like, hey, man.
Yeah, how did you? Well, I don't know if they came from poverty and then got rich. I just don't know. I mean, like, the Nancy Pelosi thing. Like, she was on. They did a whole 60 Minutes on this of her getting this inside track into an IPO that did really great. I don't.
In there, like when the stock market, and then a whole bunch of congressmen, they move all their money. Insider trading is actually legal in D.C. Reason being is because they did it so much up there that the courts couldn't keep up, so they just made it legal. I didn't know that. So that's amazing to me.
It's still not. Like, they're being investigated. For the story you're talking about, they're still being investigated.
I get investigated.
But the
I don't know about a damn job. I didn't get an investigation, man. But like, you did what? All right, just like every other American.
Okay, as a high school teacher, I have many students that are interested in joining the military after they graduate. Which is one piece of advice that you would give to students that are thinking about enlisting in the military after they graduate? I don't know about it. The same advice we gave earlier, actually, and I would say just go for it. You're gonna love it. I really don't believe you'll have regrets.
Well, the best I heard, man, just like look, your mind is your kind of your weapon. If you can get to college and learn and just hang out there for a little bit, it'll teach you social skills because you're young, man. You're not.
This is a good one, and it's a little cherry on top to what we talked about before. What advice would you give a fellow veteran interested in going into politics?
Go.
Well, definitely go for it, but here's the number one thing. You have to know why you are running. You have to know why you are running for office. That's a deep question. It sounds simple, but it's deep. And it could be a number of things, and I can't answer that for you. But it can't just be, a lot of veterans fall into this trap. They might run for office and they'll say, I just want to keep serving. I was serving before, I want to keep serving. That's fine to say that, but that can't be your main tagline.
You got to stand for something, right?
Yeah, it's got to be policy related or philosophical or it's a story. Like it's something that really means something to people, and only you can answer that. How do you feel you can make a change with the state of partisanship we are in? Well, it's one reason I wrote the book. Because this is part of my ability to communicate to everybody. It's why I started a podcast. It's why I work so hard to communicate to so many people.
You do work
across
hard, man.
all platforms. Whether
I'm
it's
impressed.
thank you.
You're welcome, dude. I don't pay a compliment, man, unless I earned it, especially to an officer.
Because I just want people to understand what conservatives stand for. I'm not so sure that conservatives have done a great job telling people what we stand for, and so that's why I put so much of that.
Apparently nobody has. That's why everybody's upset.
Oh, this is interesting. You've expressed in the past that you agree that there should be term limits in Congress. Can you elaborate what you think that should look like? Thanks for all the hard work. Yeah. So.
Would that be state dependent?
No, it's you'd have to change the Constitution for federal term limits. So it's highly unlikely that will happen. And yeah, I'm like on the razor's edge here. Technically, I support them because most people support them. But I want everybody to understand the pros and cons of term limits. If you term limit Congress people, and you know, there's reasonable term limits and then there's unreasonable ones. But if you term limit Congress people, you are truly invigorating the administrative state because they know they don't have to listen to those letters that I write them anymore. If they know that I'm just going to be gone in a couple of years. The staff in Congress too is ultimately strengthened if members of Congress are just coming and going rapidly. And people think that a lot of members are there forever, and obviously that's true in many cases, but the average time in Congress is like, I think 7 to 9 years. So it's really not that long.
What about doing it like we did in the teams? So when you first get in there, your first push is 5, because you guys get in, man, then you got to go, as you get your rhythm, then you got to go run for re-election.
I'm term limited every 2 years, really, because I have to win re-election every 2 years.
When you first get in there, you get 5 years. Yeah. And then after that, it's the 2, you know what I'm talking about, like we did, because that way you get your experience.
Yeah.
And because it is tough, man. I mean, to get enough work done, to get people to know you, then to get your battle rhythm, then you got to go. Yeah. And then your people are like, hey, what have you done? I'm like, man, I didn't do nothing. I just tried to get my footing in there.
Yeah, it's hard to get the, you know, some people want like a
especially now, right?
6-year term limit for members for House members and 12 years for senators. So that's 2 terms. I mean, it's you don't build any authority. You don't build any senior standing. It's been harder and harder for me to see the pros of term limits and what exactly people think that would improve. Even though, you know, again, if you ask me, I'll say yes, I support them. But I think there needs to be a good debate on how those play out. Steps. Okay, climate change. Are there any steps that can be taken to improve the climate without crippling the energy sector and killing jobs? Yes, I've been very outspoken. We've got some good policy on this. It's innovation. Carbon capture technology as it relates to natural gas. We've got to stop importing Russian natural gas. I just wrote an op-ed about this in the Washington Examiner. We need to save our energy sector. If American energy was supplying the world, we would be reducing carbon emissions enormously. Why? Because every time we produce oil or gas, it has significantly less carbon emissions than Saudi or Russian.
I know, it blows my mind that like we literally go over there and fight their wars and like that, man, and we have to pay them. And we have all that stuff here. We can do it here.
We've got some work to do on the energy sector.
And clean up your trash.
Yeah.
Just pick up the area down around you, man. It's unbelievable. There's like an island in the middle of the ocean of plastic, which blows my mind. And I'm like, hey, literally just pick up the trash around you.
And banning plastic straws isn't going to help. What helps is not putting plastic in the ocean. That's the goal. And guess who's putting all the plastic in the ocean? It's mostly China. Dude. All right, that's the number one river that puts plastic in the ocean is the Yangtze River. We have time for a couple more. I don't know. Does this thing go off automatically in an hour? We can probably go a couple more minutes. Go through some of these questions. What in your
just-
what in your estimation can veterans do at the grassroots level to fight back against the swells of socialism swelling up in this country? Well, it's not just veterans, of course. It's everybody. Get educated and make the arguments to anybody that.
Man,
that
if you're a veteran, you're educated. Get up and get outside, man. A lot of times we just kind of hang out in there, and then that's what lets all that other stuff come out.
Explain to people this, like in the veteran community, we believe in a meritocracy to a huge degree. Like socialist advocates would say, hey, the military is a socialist entity, so like how could you not be favoring socialism? Well, they're at that point they're misinterpreting what socialism is. Socialism takes away the meritocracy, right? You have no reason to.
That's the best part. Is like people have mentioned you can't do that in a socialist country,
right?
And the best way I've ever heard it described is like imagine going into class at Harvard or whatever, and one guy busts his butt and gets an A, and the other one just kind of gets a D or an F. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not fair. So why don't both of us get B's?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it doesn't.
That's what that is.
Take away personal incentive.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what drives
personal
everything. I get, man, everybody. You can't get too far ahead on one side, and people got consuming more than they. Yeah, that's ridiculous, man. We're supposed to police ourselves.
So this question: what is your best strategy for getting millennials engaged, more patriotic, and actively supporting American first ideals? Listen, I try to do this all the time, and I do it through short videos that are both educational and meaningful. I want to say something meaningful that matters to our current conversation, and I think that's what millennials are looking for. Millennials are not convinced by talking points. A lot of politicians they stick to these sort of high level talking points, like this bill will do better here, but millennials are not that quick to be persuaded by that, and that's a good thing. We want a few extra layers. We want to know what's going on. We're used to seeing a lot of information on our phone. Unfortunately, a lot of that information has warped a lot of people's minds and made people think that America's bad. So I try to put out these counter arguments that are based in fact and history and persuade people. I mean, that's
Let me tell you something about the millennials. I spend a lot of time when I train them, and if y'all haven't been paying attention, they're different. They're exceptional. They have what we would have called back in the day special abilities. Their hand-eye coordination. What they have with this iPhone is they have way too much information and not enough life experience to strap it down yet.
Yeah.
They'll be fine. And they're looking for their places. You hear the Me Too and then everyone who's in charge of it, all they do is bitch and complain and yell at each other. And you don't want to be a part of that, but they're so hungry, man. And when we come out of this, what the millennials do, man, I'm so ready for those guys and gals to catch their tread. Just wait.
Yeah.
Like our stepping in.
But we've got work to do.
Of course, man.
There's a ton of potential with this generation. And Gen Z as well, because there is so much information there. But I think what you hit on was like there's a bit of a lack of humility yet.
Well, it's because comedy's only going one way.
Yeah.
Once Saturday Night Live, you pick on one side, if the other side tries to pick back, they get offended. Look, our comedians, y'all are so important. So and if y'all don't, hey, great job on Saturday Night Live, bro. I was I was stoked.
Well, that leads to our next question. What was Pete Davidson's apology off camera sincere? Was his claim that it was forced actually a stunt to become relevant? So two very interesting questions. I thought it was sincere when he did it. I really did. I mean, he's clearly kind of an embarrassed kid, and obviously I get it. His bosses definitely told him to do it. But that doesn't mean it wasn't sincere. I think he, as in his own words, he was kind of felt like a dick. I also don't think he meant it the way it was taken, which is also why I never called for his firing, because I could imagine a world where he was definitely going after Republicans, right? He was clearly biased and mean-spirited, go with that. But he didn't necessarily want to go after wounded veterans. I don't think that was his intent, and that's what I write about in this book. Which again you can click on right now. A portion of the proceeds go to charity.
I've been watching Saturday Night Live for a long time. Pete, he's been through a lot coming up in his life. And when you see those comedians, a lot of time, and they do, man, those Saturday Night Live, man, that's such a hard blessing to carry, to be selected to do that, man. And when sometimes they go in, and you know how it works, man. Like with us, you make a bad time, keep going, you make a bad ass or whatever. And a lot of times when they go to dark comedy, it's hard to pull back out of that. That's why a lot of those comedians, man, they ended the bad way. But and everything feeds itself. You're a good man. You went in there and played just like a team guy. So that's exactly how you should have done it. And if everybody else is spending that, in different directions, man. You were there, he was there, and no one else was.
So, and then the next question was, the claim that he was forced to actually stunt to become relevant. So you're talking about his recent Netflix special, and I just would say that the guy can't stop thinking about me. He's obsessed with me. He texts me.
Hell yeah, it was forced. I was standing back there in the back. I was like,
he's obsessed with me.
Oh, Pete, man, you're good, bro.
Let's read some text messages from Pete Davidson right now.
Yeah, you got his number.
Dan,
Give it to me, man.
Dan, this one's weird. This one's Dan. You up? That was from like midnight last night.
Yeah, of course I'm up.
Yeah, what do you mean, Pete? Like, stop being weird.
Yeah, right.
Just kidding.
Hey, wait till we start. If we lock down too long, we'll start making our own Saturday. We'll call it Sunday Night Live.
Oh my God, we'd be hilarious. We'd be hilarious.
Oh man.
So,
because we can take on any and everybody.
This one's good. Name your favorite state besides Texas.
Texas.
West Texas.
Yeah,
just
West Texas.
When it comes to resilience, most people find that one thing that keeps them going. What was your one thing? Let me answer it this way. So chapter 2 is called "Who is Your Hero?" And this is the first chapter to start. Well, it's the second chapter, but it's one of the first chapters because to get to all of these other lessons in mental toughness, you first have to answer who you want to be. Like how would I, if I was the perfect version of myself, how would I react to this situation? It's like when I go through buds and like, I don't want to be a crybaby. I don't want to be the guy who's like, complaining and like dragging his other guys behind. So I know ahead of time that I want to embody this sort of hero archetype that I want to be. And then I just decide I want to be that. So I think that's the one thing I sort of have I visualize in my mind what I want to do. And I'm always falling short of that. Like, this book is not written about me being perfect.
Oh, sure.
Like,
imperfect. Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
like, it's just,
because that's how you know. Look, here's the thing, man. You can ask all these questions you want or just show your ass up. And they'll answer themselves. And that's kind of the cool part. When we said, man, there's no contract, like World War II boys and back in the day, man, they just burned the boats. Yep. They drop you off, be like, hey, survive or die. And that's kind of the way it is. If you surround yourself. When I was going through med school, I would buy anatomy books, rip them out, and that was my wallpaper. I'd write my goals out on the mirror, and when I'd accomplish one, I'd erase it and write another one. And everybody I hung around all the movies that we watched, it was strictly devoted on what I was to become. And then if you create that reality around you, the body will automatically succumb to it.
So maybe this is a good one to end on. How do you find purpose after the military? There's probably a lot of veterans watching.
Yeah.
And so this is always a really tough one for veterans, and it's the most important question because the military tells us what our purpose is and what our mission is in a very detailed way. And so I think a lot of veterans leave, and then they're still looking for that mission, and then they're very surprised by the fact that it's not clearly delivered to them. And if it is, they feel like it's not as important as what they were doing before.
That's right. Yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
And so that's a problem for a lot of people, and I think it drives a lot of that crazy. It puts them in a dark place. And so the first thing I always say is, like, if you're alive, you therefore have a purpose, and it's your duty to find that purpose. And nobody's going to give it to you, and that purpose might be small at first, but it does build. And you should take a step back. If you don't like what you're doing at that moment, well, then do one more step, 3 more steps that'll get you to a better moment and a better sense of duty and a better sense of mission. But you have it and God gave it to you and you have to find it. That is because remember, a lot of your fellow veterans aren't here to find theirs now. And right. I think that should get you jazzed up in the morning to get up, make your bed, and move out.
That's your purpose. You made it. And a lot of people out here are like, hey man, there's no jobs out there for snipers, and well, there's not that title. Get rid of all those titles.
Yeah.
What goes into being a sniper?
Why can't it be a manager?
Yeah. What goes into making a sniper? Patience, discipline, all that. Bro, right. Hey, that's your resume. Yeah. Like pull all the titles, the cool titles that we put on it, like breacher, door kicker. You know what I'm talking about? Totally. Unless you're a pizza guy, you're a door kicker, whatever. But I mean, with the quals that you have, man. You can't believe how easy it is. Like, we literally can't use our skill sets against our people while we're in uniform because it's a forever uniform. But once you take it off, bro, or gals, turn back around and go straight in and hit it back.
That's a practical answer that vets need to hear.
I put a lot of thought into it.
You've got to train because I had a hard time with this too. I mean, I didn't go to a normal job right after the military. I went to school and then I ran for office, and so I know because when I was looking at normal jobs, and they're hard. Like it's
Well, people
it's
have been
hard
doing
to-
them. I mean, we took
Yeah.
a sidetrack. Like we were in
Right.
the military, and everybody else is going. So you think you're just going to pop out and come into the job where everybody else has been
Right.
busting their ass? That's like them coming into the military and say, "I just want to be a captain because I was, I was a CEO." No,
Right.
check the mailroom, homie.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's
You gotta
incumbent
start-
upon you to start at the bottom in the mailroom and learn everything in there and learn all the people. Because what we do well is work with people. So if you
Yeah.
try to go in and just be the boss's buddy, man, that's like sticking the rich kid in there to run it. He's going to resent you and everything else, man. But
Right.
if you get in there and you don't want to be in a hurry. I mean, we got nothing but time.
Yeah, and you got to sell that. You got to sell those qualities. I'm going to show up on time. I'm gonna dive into every single task you give me, and if I don't, and you yell at me, it's just going to make me work harder. Like that's a very
That's the difference.
veteran response.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know? And I think employers when they realize that, because maybe they don't know that. I think they have this. And I was talking about this with Matt Best the other day. Is a lot of employers think veterans are damaged in some way.
And they won't yell at them. That's the
Yeah,
problem. They're
right.
waiting for you to get on to them.
Right.
And a lot of people don't like to be yelled at. We do.
And I point out that
We do.
one of the reasons employers think that is there's too many veterans saying we are damaged, and we ourselves have to be like, hold on, no, we're tough as hell, and we're going to do the best job that we possibly can.
Man, yeah, you're not battle damaged. You're battle hardened.
That's right.
That's what that means. You didn't come out of there weaker. You came out stronger. You need to flip that script, man. Anybody telling you that you came out of there with all the scars and tats, I don't know who's been selling you that line, but you don't come out of war weaker. It's like coming out of prison soft. That ain't how that works,
Battle
okay?
hardened. I should have named my book Battle Hardened.
You want to change it?
That was the back. Is it too late?
We can write on the back.
Yeah, we'll just scribble.
I got a stencil, man. I'm like, let's square that out.
Love it. That's a great place to end. Marcus, thank you so much. For, I would shake your hand, but we're not going to do that because we're social distancing. Thank you all for tuning in. Oh God.
3 feet.
We forgot to tell the story about the 6 feet.
Oh, the swim buddy rule.
Yeah, yeah.
Like team guys can't.
Yeah, yeah.
If we get caught more than 6 feet apart, they used to beat us and
Oh my
torture us.
God.
They had this huge rope that they would strap over the top of us, man. If you got walking in a different direction, man, it
But it goes both ways, which was so hilarious. So Bud's a swim buddy in Bud's, meaning you always have a swim buddy, right? There's one guy that you're kind of attached to.
I mean, like
in some ways.
right there.
And you cannot be more than 6 feet from your swim buddy at any given moment. Or you can change the swim buddy's there's a little flexibility there, but you can't just go off running alone. Ever.
They'll get rid of you.
But at the same time, you cannot come within 6 feet of an instructor.
Yeah.
This is always the
Yeah.
rule in Buds. And the funny part is that's for health reasons.
Yeah.
Because you're gross in Buds, you're like
man.
sniveling all over yourself.
Everything.
You're crying all the time. Well, I wasn't. I mean, everybody else was.
Yeah, I wouldn't cry.
I wasn't.
It went hard for
No,
me.
it was easy.
Cold.
But
I
you're
wouldn't
gross. There's all this bacteria on you from the ocean.
I've had 9 rounds of anthrax.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some things like, look, I got blown apart in Afghanistan and buried in a hole. If that stuff jumps up at me, it's like, what is this?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Like they'll just they used to
Bring
give
it.
us Japanese stuff. I mean, every disease you can imagine they would stick it. SEAL stands to see if these dudes will live through this stuff. You know what I'm talking about? I mean, I can't believe some of the stuff they gave us. I was like, man. Coronavirus, whatever.
The spelling's not whatever.
know,
So, but whatever.
I'm not ready. I'm not saying this for everybody.
Seals have been used to the 6 foot distancing for
Yeah.
a long time. So I was just like, oh my god, the entirety of America is going through Buds right now.
Yeah, as soon as he pulled
And
out
we're
there, and I
gonna crush
tackled
it.
him into the river, dude. I was like, I'm so happy to see you.
All right, that's a wrap. That was
God
a lot
bless
of
you
fun.
guys, man. Y'all
That was
stay
a lot of
strong.
fun.
Don't worry about it.
Appreciate
We
you
got
guys
this.
tuning in.